Okay, you're live.
Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education Finance Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025, and the time is 6:03. Joining me tonight are board members Diana Carpio and Karen Nelson-Bakey. Also with us tonight are CFO Linda Asmani and Director Christine Karsmid. First, I will entertain a motion to approve the September 10th, 2025 minutes. Ms. Carpio, is there a second? Ms. Bakey? If there are no revisions or changes, that motion is approved and it's passed. Next, we will hear from, let's see, Mr. Asmani, Ms. Karsman. I don't know who's going to make this presentation to review the 2025 budget transfers. Ms. Karsman, I guess you're probably going to do that.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go through the budget transfers. We have a page and a half of them. I'll just start at the top. So the first one is for Center for Global Studies. What this is really doing is it's not an actual change. It's just how we're funding a certain position. We're swapping something in a grant pool. So it's really just shifting what's showing up in the local budget, $450,000. And it just has to do with the parameters of the grant. So no real change there, just a funding source change. The next series related to Roten, what this is just an accounting cleanup related to the positions. A lot of the positions at Roten are split positions where a teacher's teaching, for example, part science, part social studies. So this is just to get the corrections split correctly for EFS coding. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 related to Roten, and it ends with 29/121. The next series has to do with coding, which a lot of these are. We have CMS moving from instruction to mathematics. It was just coded as general instructions, but really it was a budget of a mathematics position. So you can see there, the coding's 1, 2, 4, 4 ones and a 0 instead of just basic instruction. That's also for our reporting to the state. And then the next one has to do with CMS music. We had a change from a music position to a math position due to the need of the schedule and the certification of this particular employee requested by the school. Moving on to the next one, we have CMS, also a coding, moving from instruction to science, just to get that correct coding, 1, 2, 4, 1, 1, 1, 3, 0 on that position. The next two for Sono, same thing. We had a paraeducator that was coded as general instruction. It's really should be coded as pre-K. The following one, same thing here, just a coding, accounting, Jefferson reading. This is a generic instructional teacher, so a classroom teacher. So you could see the coding there, 132, 11000. The next one is our typical special education. It was coded as district-wide for this paraeducator, and really it is at CMS. You could see by project number 24, so that's just allocating this position to the school. The next one has to do with Tracy School needing a reading teacher versus a mathematics teacher. And you can see on all these two, it does show you the PCN. So if anyone had any additional questions, we can look into that particular position. The next transfer here says redesign, and really what this is 126,100. This was our carryover, not a true carryover fund from year end, but having to do with delays of purchase orders or payments. When the city gives us that money to move it from one year to the next, they deposit it into this 150 account. So this is just us taking it from the 150 account and putting it in the proper accounts related to the purchase orders and payroll severance payouts. So that's all that's doing there in the amount of 126,100. The next one has to do with special education. It's a vacant psychiatrist. So it couldn't be filled, but the services were needed by the students. So we're taking it from a 119 payroll account and allocating it to a 330 professional services outsourced. If you change to the next page, this one has to do with facilities, and we had a change in vendor, which did an inspection on, our sprinklers and all of our other services needed, our life safety systems, and what the inspection had come up with are additional services needed, like extra batteries changed or sprinklers checked. And that's what the life safety transfer is related to.
Where did that?
That came from facilities like the purchase service budget, and they're just putting it into the direct account needed 492, which is related to those types of inspections and changes for batteries, sprinkler systems, etc. But the company we changed to was more thorough in the inspection, so that's good and bad, right? You're spending a little more money, but then we're making sure we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. The next transfer had to do with a vacancy. Same thing, a vacancy at Nathan Hale Middle School, a 117 special education teacher. So we really had to put that in outsourced services, so the students are getting the services they need for 105,000. The next piece here had to do with, or the next transfer had to do with food services. So Luna's gonna go in more detail when he talks about the state of everything and food services, but this has to do with transferring money from our local funding where we are finding any payroll savings and scooping there to transfer to Fund 16 first before it goes into Fund 16, the food service account. I'm sorry, Fund 41. It first goes into the operation 910 account as like a holding. So as we get savings throughout the district, we put it in the 910 account. And then once we accumulate a certain amount of money, we transfer it to the food services account. So that's there, that's worth 182,000. And then finally, this last long transfer has to do with really just consolidating all of the communications T-Mobile accounts and transferring it to the technology account just for ease of billing. We consolidated it there so they can pay out of one account and not, every school account. So there's really no impact there. It's just a billing change.
So the way that it is now, each of those schools are paying independently? Is that?
It's in their budget, and then we have a central bill and it allocates the charges to each school, but it's cumbersome to go through. So what we did was we scooped up all of those budgets and we transferred it to the technology budget, and they'll just pay one bill out of one account.
Gotcha.
This was like not worth going through all that every single month. So really it's a wash, but it's more of a consolidation. Any questions?
Nothing for me.
Are there any questions? Can you go over the food service section again?
Sure. So the food service, we do know we have a anticipated deficit every year, whether we're on CEP or non-CEP. And what we do during the year is we budget in the 910 account, but sometimes we don't have enough in there for the anticipated deficit. What this is doing is taking money out of particular accounts, in this case, 159 and 113, where either these things were paid out of a different budget or we had some payroll savings. So then we take those savings and we transfer it into the 910 account within the operations budget. And then once we feel it's the right time, we take that money and we transfer it to the food service fund to help combat that deficit. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to move the budget transfers.
Motion.
Second. So that motion has passed, and so next we will get a report on the FY26 budget review.
Thank you. So you do have the PowerPoint in your hands. In the handouts, I also included in the agenda packet detailed line item object level information, but what I'm presenting is just a summary. But the agenda packet does have the detailed information. I also included in your agenda packet a narrative description of what the drivers are for each of these major categories. But I'll kind of go over these generally, but the detail is included in your packets and that you
This
have.
is the same as everything that we got, right? I mean, you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd like to begin by just talking about where we are with the budget, how the budget started, As you recall, in June, the budget that was approved was the $242.6 million budget. Following some additional conversations with the city, there was an additional appropriation of $4.5 million that was applied to the FY26 budget. There was also an additional $1.5 million, actually another $2 million that was transferred into the health insurance account. So it was a total of $6.5 million, but $4.5 million went to the general fund, and that's what's reflected here. And how what this allowed us to do was to bring back 52 positions, and you can see how it's distributed. Most of it went to salaries. There's just under 900,000 went to benefits, and then the 20,000 was a kids in crisis program at Brian McMahon. So we didn't have the funding to fully fund that contract. So 20,000 was the difference. So that's how the $4.5 million was allocated. And I believe in prior discussions, you also have seen position level detail of how the 4.5 and all the positions and all the schools, that's also been publicly shared. So that brought the budget to 247.2, which is about a 5.9% year-over-year increase. The reason we share this at the very beginning is because as we begin developing the FY27 budget, our goal is to maintain those 52 positions in the budget. So we will be starting our budget request with all of the 52 positions included. So we'll begin at the 247.2 million, and then we'll be making an incremental request over that. And as we've shared before, this year, state statute allows boards of ed to transfer 2% at the end of each year. Because of the challenges we had last year, we did not carry over any money, and that funding we depleted that funding last year. So there is no additional carryover funding in any of the board of ed accounts. I am happy to share that you did receive the budget book for this year. This is news we received, I believe, yesterday or the day before, that our budget book has also received the Meritorious Budget Award distinction from the American Association of School Business Officials International. As well. Thanks, So we're excited about that, and I think this speaks to our effort. We're trying to be transparent, but it is a collective effort. You know, obviously the budget team works hard to put all the numbers together, but we also include narrative descriptions. Each of our schools is featured, what their priorities are, their enrollment. Cabinet provides a lot of information in here, so the document is very comprehensive. It's more than just financials. It is actually just an operation guide, talks about our goals, our priorities. And we also provide trend information and so forth. And it is object level information at the district level. We also provide detailed information on our grants at the object level, at the grant level. And then each of our schools has their budgets with 3 years worth of history and the current budget revised and approved. So we have 5-year level of history across departments. As well. So we're excited to receive this recognition because I think it does speak to the efforts of our ongoing efforts. In addition to this, we have our budget website, dedicated budget website that we've had, I think now for 3 years, Kristen, maybe. This is the 3rd year. And so that's also another source of information where people can go and get information on the budget. But we're very excited to receive this news. So excited about that.
But that's not the first time, right?
No, so we started this, I think this is our 4th year now since we started applying and putting budgets in a way that's consistent with best
And
practice.
that's information that the public should know. The public doesn't know that this is the 4th year that we've done this. So if we can figure out a way to put it either as a picture slide on the Norwalk Public Schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or if it could be sent out to the schools also.
We'll work with our communications team and our schools as well. So thank you. Okay. And thanks to you. Obviously, you make this work possible. You set the expectations and we work hard to deliver.
You're the ones sharpening the pencils.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
But I do want to say thank you. And you guys don't get enough credit for what you do and the number of hours that you put in.
Agree.
And also for trying to make it user-friendly, you know, so that people can understand it. I talked a lot about that when I was campaigning about the fact that you have all of these simple items, you know, you've made things that are very comprehensive, simple for people
Mm-hmm.
who want to just get that, so thank you for that.
So I'll walk through briefly the major categories of the budget, and then there are some issues I want to talk about. Kristen mentioned about food services, just to tell you where we are with that, some of the most recent updates. So, these are the financials as of October 31st. So we are a third of the year in. And where we're trending is where we would anticipate to be. The year to date does include all of those 52 additional positions that I mentioned. And the difference between last year and this year is really a timing because it depends on when your payroll hits. This year, I think in October, we had 3 pay periods biweekly, as compared to last year, that hit 2. And so you'll see that year to date, it shows that we're significantly higher than last year, but that's just the timing because this October we had 3 versus last year we had 2. As we go throughout the year, it'll kind of even out. But we are where we would expect to be this year overall. With the overall spend. So again, this speaks to the salaries. It shows we're at 38.4 million compared to 32.9 million last year. And again, that is really the function of the timing. Our benefits primarily are our transfers to our health insurance account. We budget quarterly transfers into the insurance account. We have done the first quarter transfer of just under $9 million. So we'll have 4 more transfers to make. Our year-end transfer should be in the tune of $36 million or so that we budget, 36, 37. The other additional items in benefits are things that the employer pays for Social Security, for workers' compensation, those additional benefits, 401k, 401a contributions. So those are included in the benefits. But the biggest percentage of this is health insurance benefits. And again, that's consistent. We are watching that closely because part of the challenge with health insurance is when we budget at the beginning of the year, we budget based on an estimated census count. And as employees join the organization and leave the organization, sometimes that changes. So you may have at the time of the census had a teacher at a school who's single with no kids. Well, that teacher retires and another teacher is hired who is married with 3 kids. And so they take on more benefits. And so we see these fluctuations year round. So it's not an exact science. And so each year, towards the end of the year, we do like a true up. But at the beginning of the year, we go with our best estimate of what those benefits will be. So this is an area that we, again, continue to track very closely. Our professional technical services, these are primarily services that we contract out for, that we don't do internally. And again, those are trending where we would expect them to be at this time of year. Property services, these are services related to the upkeep of our facilities, custodials, security, utilities. These are all under property services, and therefore you'll see that this is where we are. Again, consistent with what we have budgeted for these services. Other student services is one of the big ones. This is where our out-of-district tuition is budgeted out of, and also our out of sped transportation expenses. This is one that has consistently been challenging to us because we have limited control over it. Again, at the beginning of the year, we make an estimate based on the students that we have, the students that we know are moving. Next year, we try to take into account students we know that are going to be graduating, that are either needing out-of-district tuition. We try to estimate what the service costs are going to be for the students, but it has been challenged. As you know, for the past 2 years, we have had to move money from other accounts just to cover the increased sped expenses. We were fortunate this year in FY26, I think after 2 years of somewhat underfunding that, we feel like we funded it to a level close to where it is. Looking at the trends, however, we are beginning to see that those costs are escalating, but I think we will have the challenge this year to meet those expenses will be less than the challenges in the past because we were able to budget closer to what we anticipate the actual spend will be. But the challenges continue. You just approved some transfer that included sped transfers as well. So this is an area that we are continuing to watch just to make sure that we stay on top of it.
So sorry, Linda, can you go back to that?
Sure.
So looking at the FY 26 adjusted at 27.01 and then the year to date at 15.29. So we're trending high.
We are trending high. However, some of it is timing because some of these contracts, like the sped transportation contract, some of these contracts we pay upfront. So there's some costs that we pay upfront that they don't necessarily follow the calendar.
Okay.
And so it kind
So
of
it's
levels
not
out
like
towards the
an-
end of the year. Yes,
We're
So it's not-
kind of,
correct.
this is what we have.
Correct.
Come
So when
this
we're
year.
looking at our projections, we look at, beyond the year over year and the percentage of the budget, but we really track the number of students, and Mr. Pennington and his team do a really
Mhm.
good job of tracking who's in, who's out, what services are they getting. This is also including mandated services when families take us to court for their children, their students, we're mandated to take on those services. So just because we're at 15.2, I don't want you to think it's 15.2 times 3
Right.
to get to the overall cost. No, but we feel like we're probably gonna hit closer to the $28 million mark at the end of the year,
Got it.
which is higher than when we've been in the past. You'll see that last year we were at 21 million, but our transportation contracts have gone up as well, and the number of students
So,
identified with
all of
needs
it.
also has increased. So
Right.
we're tracking this closely as well. Supplies and materials is kind of what it means, supplies and materials. This again is trending where we would expect it to be. So there is nothing of significance here. The same thing for equipment. A majority of our equipment we are included in the capital budget, but we do have some equipment in the operating budget. But again, as you can see, that's consistent with where we would be this time of year. Some of these are also contracts, and so we front load some of these expenses as well. So it levels off at the end of the year. Some of these contracts we pay at the end of the agreement and not at the beginning. So equipment it fluctuates, but we're tracking this one as well. It's consistent. Most of these are under contract, so we don't see too much fluctuation year over year from what we've budgeted. And then other objects, these are just miscellaneous other items that don't fit into one of those categories. These are things like subscriptions and memberships and dues to various organizations that we're required to belong to. So these things are captured in other objects. And again, that's consistent with where we would hope to be this year. And then food services, this is one that Diana, you had a question on, and as Kristen has mentioned, each year we budget to transfer money from the general fund into the food services account. So this 0.67 million, for example, for this year was budgeted in that 910 account that Kristen was talking about. We know that, and we budgeted 0.67 under the assumption that we were not going to be in CEP. We know that since then we've made the decision to be in CEP. Since then, the city has come in and approved a $200,000 transfer. We've got another 200,000 from philanthropy, and we're also looking to find some additional funding from savings within the district, which includes that 187 that you just approved today, but that's part of the transfer. So year to date, you'll see that we've done the 0.67, which is the full amount that we'd budgeted to transfer. We've already done that. You'll see that last year the number was 0. We were not able to transfer funds last year into the food services account just because of the challenges that we were having. And so what we're planning on doing this year is to recoup some of these savings throughout the year so that we could transfer these fundings into that account. Similar to what we did last year with special education. So it's a similar process to that. And then grants and other programs, this just represents our grants that we receive from the state. We're not seeing any new grants coming in. Grants are becoming more and more competitive. As I shared last month, we were happy to hear that the Magnet School Assistance Program, MSAP grant, that has been renewed. So we have that funding for this year because I believe that funds 9 positions, I think right now, across 3 schools, elementary, middle, and high school. So we're happy that we got that funding. We're monitoring that for next year because this would be year 3 of 5 for that funding. And then just back to food services, again, the challenges we have with food services are multiple. So one is, as I shared, when we approved the budget at the beginning back in June, we had anticipated not being in the CP program. So we had made the calculation of how much would it cost us if we were to get back into the CP program, which at the time when we did the initial budget was about $1.1 million or so. So there was a gap of about 500,000 or some along those lines. And that's where the city came up with the 200, the philanthropy 200, and we would come up with a difference. So that would have covered that gap for this year. However, we have since found out that we had applied for a number of grants that typically fund the school lunch program that we did not receive, or we did not receive at the levels that we had anticipated. So the first one is the fresh fruit and vegetable grant. When we had put in for this grant, we had applied for 10 schools. Historically, we have been funded for 10 schools. This year, when the grant was approved, they only approved it for 4. And so that left us with a shortfall of about $135,000 from that grant program that we had anticipated we would receive. Additionally, tied to that is the supper program, which again is a reimbursement program. We had anticipated in the past 10 schools. We only got 4. And so that component of the grant, we're losing $280,000 of what we had anticipated. And then there's the local food for schools incentive program. This is a reimbursement program, but those reimbursement funds have been exhausted, and we had anticipated about $40,000 to come from that. And so we're not going to get that. So in addition to that shortfall that I mentioned earlier, we're now seeing reduction in grants of about $460,000 in the school lunch fund. And then the final piece to that is the way that the school lunch fund works is that we get reimbursement for the number of students that take meals. What we're seeing this year is we are seeing that the meal counts have decreased. I think part of it has to do with initially the communication that when we were not on CEP, so some parents decided to just pack kids their lunches. And even though we're back on CEP, we still have a number of parents or a number of students that are still bringing food from home. And therefore we are feeding fewer students in our lunch program.
That could change though, I would imagine.
It could. And so one of the things that communications and Jill with food services is working on is communications, talking about the nutritional value of the foods that we have. And so we're hoping that number will change. But as of now, we sat with Chartwells, who is a contractor for food services. In sitting down with them, they're estimating about 422,000 decrease. Mm-hmm. So all in all, we're looking at about an $800,000 shortfall in revenue this year from the food services program. So what we're going to try and do is find savings again within other areas within the district and transfer money into this. But as you can see, there's quite a few areas we're trying to transfer money to. We're trying to transfer money for food services, trying to transfer money for special education and all of those things. So that's adding to the pressure. So even though at the beginning I said, I feel comfortable with where we are with special education, but this is an area that we just hadn't foreseen. And so this is a new challenge that we have this year that we have to figure out. But we have been in communication. Superintendent has shared this information with the mayor, so the city is aware that this is one of the challenges that we're having. So we're going to continue to have ongoing conversations. And as we continue to meet, I'll keep giving you updates on this one as well. And therefore, just looking at the food services fund year to date, we've spent 1.7 million compared to 1.3 million last year, but the budget we had was 7.5 million. So the goal for this year to break even, we need to bring in $7.5 million as revenue into the fund so that it doesn't suffer deficit. As you know, last year we weren't able to. And so we have a deficit of about $1.1 million going into this year that we're hoping to decrease. But I think one of the strategies we're applying for this budget development is to trying to also include recovery of these funds as we're building the budget for FY27. But that's where we are with the food services fund. And I'd be happy to answer any questions as part of this update.
So and those grants were in lieu of if we didn't get the money from the city and the philanthropy, or were they going to be worked together?
No, so these grants were grants that we've historically received.
Anyway, okay.
And so when we went to the city asking for that money, it was with the assumption that these grants were coming.
Okay, gotcha.
And so-
Including both, okay.
Yes, it was including both.
Right.
And so subsequent to that, we found out that these grants have gone, and so now
Gotcha.
we have this hole that we haven't yet planned. We're still working on addressing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say it's important that we get the communication out that the CEP program is back
It's ongoing,
on.
yeah.
Yes.
Because we don't want kids like not
Not
eating,
eating.
you know, not going up for something because they think that they can't.
Right.
That's concerning.
Mhm. So we are working on that with the communications team and flyers, and Parent Square has sent out messages where we've been they put together videos of the school lunch program, and so we'll keep working on that as well. We're also sending messages to the principals to reach out to their families to let them know that
Mhm.
is
Like
on.
we noticed that. Okay.
Yes.
So direct messaging.
Yep,
Okay.
so we're doing that now, and Chartwell is also tracking that. We are starting to see some trends. We're also seeing that in finance, because you know how parents pay for these is through My School Bucks. And so there are a number of parents, initially with the messaging that we're out of CP, started filling their My School Bucks accounts so that their children could swipe. We are seeing requests for reimbursement in that parents are recognizing, no, I don't need to pay for my meals. My student can eat for free. So that's also something we're trending. So we are processing some reimbursements through My
That
School
would
Bucks.
potentially impact
Yeah.
that number.
Yes.
Positively.
Yes, so that would impact the number, the meal decreases, because when we reimburse the parents, then that's
The
federal,
money.
that's money that we get reimbursed by
Right.
the
Okay.
grant.
And you said it's a reimbursement program per meal served, I guess, right? That's how you,
Yes.
how that works, okay.
Yes.
So next, we're gonna get the FY 27 budget development updates.
Some structure. And this doesn't have a slide. I just wanted to give you an update of where we are with budget development. So we sent out what we call pro forma budgets to our central office team, the cabinet. So they've been working on those. Those were due last week on Friday, so they've been turned in together with a capital budget request for this year. As you know, Kara, on the facilities committee, our capital budget request this year will include West Rock's construction and associated projects with that. So it'll be substantially higher than it's been in the past. But those have been received. We will begin meeting the finance team. The BOE finance team meets with all of the departments next week. That's what we're doing most of next week to kind of review those. And then at your workshop in December, you will get the superintendent's recommended budget, which would include that review and where we think we are with the request for this year. We are also planning a community town hall, which will be next Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30. I believe it's here. So we look to engage parents as well. With that, we did send out a community survey on the budget just to get a sense of what the priorities are. So far, we had a little over 500 families answer that survey, which is very good. It's much higher than we had last year. And I'll give you an update later at your workshop. About 73% of those families were elementary school families, which is what we would expect, and then middle school and then high school families.
Right.
We did a survey in English and Spanish. We had 85% English responses and 15% Spanish responses. And so we're glad to do that. We did make a push at the Hispanic Heritage as well on the survey. So we did, I think we have some good responses on there as well. And so what we're looking to do now is to gather those responses and give feedback. So at the community town hall next week, I will be presenting the findings from those surveys, the priorities that the families have indicated are important to them. We also try to get some level specific, so we know like what the elementary schools want, what the middle school want, and what the high schools want, just in terms of priority. So we'll be presenting that
So you
information
hear what those
at
are.
the workshop.
Yeah.
Workshop next
Preliminarily.
week. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's my update for FY 27 budget development.
So if no one has anything? Can someone make a motion? You can make a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
This meeting is adjourned. at 6:38 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.